Hello friends and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I am back with another video and more shape cards. I love shape cards, you guys. I just do. I'm using products from Pixi Designs today. This is their new Spa Day die set, but we're definitely going to talk about ways you can do really similar things with products you may already have. So in this first card, I wanted to create a really cozy, relaxing bathroom scene, like a little space for our introverted birthdays. So I'm obsessed with this background stamp. You're going to see it in like 3 or 4 videos lately. This is the Darling Dahlias from Pink Fresh Studio. So I stamped that just to create like a wallpaper tone on tone sort of effect. I will say there are also layering stencils to go with that stamp set, and it is stunning all put together, but I didn't need that bold of a background this time. So I just stamped it. Then I am masking off a floor for my bathroom. I'm going to make a wood floor. Honestly, I could have skipped this step because my wallpaper is cardstock, but it didn't occur to me at the time. Like I could have just made half of this wood and then covered up what I didn't need. I have a wood grain stamp from LDRS Creative, but lots of companies have these, right? I think a wood grain is a really great tool to have in your arsenal. I file some of my supplies by brand, but I also have some by theme. And so I have a little section of my stamps and dies that's for scene building. And I have this background stamp for wood grain, but I also have a wood grain embossing folder, a wood grain die, some cloud stencils, some grass dies, things like that. I will leave you a link to just what I have in my stash for scene building. But look around. A lot of times companies will have these and then they'll clearance them out. And so if there's anything on clearance right now that would work for this at some of my favorite shops, I will link those for you too. They're just so versatile. I don't do a ton of scene building, but this was perfect. So anyway, while I was talking about all of that, I stamped my wood grain on the bottom and I glued down that background panel. If you don't have a wood grain something, you could also just take a pen and make some little like curved lines and squiggles. And actually, I covered a lot of it up anyway. That would work beautifully. This stamp comes from my most used sentiment stamp set. It's from Waffle Flower called the Essential Celebrations. And then there's a second one they have called Essential Sentiments. And it just, between the two, has every like generic holiday sentiment you could ever need. And I love that tiny sort of block font and then the really scripty something that goes with it. And there's dies that coordinate with them, and Waffle Flower puts magnets in with their dies, and I love that. So anyway, I just stamped it straight onto my sort of wallpaper background. I was holding my robe and my bathtub on there to make sure I got my placement right. And then now I'll assemble my die cuts. Pixi does a phenomenal job of making sure their die cuts are really easy to assemble. Aside from the fact that I had the rim of the bathtub upside down, that was an easy fix. But then I'm assembling the robe as well. It's just a couple die cuts each, right? I'm not sitting here assembling pieces forever. There's a little top on this robe that is teeny tiny, but if you left it off, no one would notice. Mine are in white. I could have just used a gel pen there if that was easier. I'm imagining that this robe is like kind of hung up. And then for me, it says, have an awesome birthday. For my birthday, I don't want to go out and have like a big shebang. I just want to have a quiet day to myself and have people like bring me food and maybe give me a spa day. Although honestly, a spa day in my own bathroom that didn't get interrupted by small children would also be great. I am adding some bubbles onto my bathtub with some white shimmer cardstock. There are 4 bubbles, and so one of them I'm going to overlap with the rim of the bubbles because I want the ones floating down and up from it to be in that sort of odd number triangle situation. And I'll just pick those up with my little pickup tool, put them down with a little glue. To make this extra special, I cut 3 of these scallop pieces from the Spellbinders Heartfelt scallop dies. The first one is from that same white glitter cardstock, so it's not very thick. So I'm just backing it with a piece of scrap cardstock that had some inking on it that I messed up. And then when I go to score this, I'm just aiming to go right in between the scallops. if you don't have this die set, use a different scallop die set, or use a stitched border, or use a big oval. Like, there's lots of ways to just change the shape of the frame of your card. And I think it just adds a little extra something. This card is going to be not quite A2. It's a little bit smaller. That scallop frame just barely fits inside of an A2, but I'm fine with that, right? That means if I do decide to add bulk on a card, it still fits really nicely into the envelope. I'm adding wet glue onto my foam to give me a little bit of wiggle room because I'm not as familiar with this die. And so trying to figure out the margins, I don't quite have that sorted out yet. But in the end, this finishes up card number 1. You don't have to make this scene, but think about ways that you can create something kind of fun and different with the shape of your card or in a scene on your card. For this one, we're gonna make a snow globe, like a Valentine heart shaker globe. I already cut and colored these Be Mine stamps from Pixi Dust Designs, and then this is one of my most used die sets from them. I tell you what, I figured out how to put it together super easily this time. I think I've put together a dozen of these, and this is the day that it all kind of clicked. Anyway, I cut some clouds from white glitter cardstock and some grass from some green cardstock. These are the Pixi Dust Clouds and Grass Slimline dies. These are also in my scene building stash. I love a slimline for this, whether it's a stencil or a die or a something like that, because it just gives me more options if I'm going to stencil, if I'm going to build a scene. If you're going to choose between a cloud die and a cloud stencil, get the die, because you can turn the die into a stencil. I have stenciled with this die before. I cut it out of some acetate and I just keep it in the pocket. I am trimming right around the edges of those to create sort of my clouds and my grass for my scene. And when I go to glue these down, I'm going to use my finger right along the bottom edge of the clouds, top edge of the grass, to make sure that none of my shaker bits are going to get stuck kind of up and underneath them. That's a pet peeve of mine when I go to put any shaker together. If you don't have a snow globe die, and I am here to say there's a snow globe for all seasons, like I just love them, you can make something similar out of some circle dies and then create a little base. It's not super hard. I think the die set obviously makes it a lot easier. If you're shopping for a snow globe die set, and I have lots of them, I like this one because you get a piece that is the entire globe. It's easy to make a shape card out of it. Sometimes you'll get like a die for the globe on the top and a die for the base, and it's easy to assemble the pieces on a flat card, but it can't stand alone. So something to keep an eye on. I will link to the snow globe dies that I have and maybe leave you a little note about each. I'll have a blog post for all of this. I think that'll be maybe a little easier to navigate some of this information. I cut the bottom of the snow globe out again using some deep sort of tealy blue cardstock. I didn't have to cut the whole globe because I don't need the whole thing. And then I traced along the bottom of the sort of frame of the globe, and I'm going to take my scissors and just trim right along that. It doesn't have to be perfect. There's another piece that goes on top. Then I'm going to add my frame to some acetate. I cut out the entire globe from some heavyweight acetate. I actually use shrink film for this. I got the idea from a video by Lou Collins. She's a designer, and then she does a lot of mixed media type of stuff. And she was like, I love this. It's super crystal clear, and it's a much heavier weight than a lot of the acetate you can buy. And as long as you're not trying to take your heat gun to it, it's perfect. Okay, so I have an entire globe, but that means I can glue this blue base right onto the acetate, and I'm gonna have the base at the same level as the frame. In the past, I haven't done this. I've been trimming my acetate right under that pink glitter frame. Let me tell you, that was a mistake. This is so much faster and easier. I filmed these two cards on the same day. I allotted myself a half hour for the first card and an hour for this one. This card was done in 28 minutes. I was shocked. That doesn't count my coloring. I'm a very, very slow colorist, but it came together very quickly. I'm using a foam tape I've had in my stash for a while. It's from Heffy Doodle, and it's a double thick foam tape, and it's super narrow. I didn't have to trim that into smaller strips. I don't use it often because normally I need a wider tape, like to cover more area. but it left so much room for my shaker bits. It shakes so well. I really love it. Maybe worth looking at. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of glue onto my foam tape because it's super sticky to give me some wiggle room. I'm lining it up on the bottom left first, and then I will just lay the whole thing flat over the rest of the globe, and that finishes my shaker. The bits on the inside are just from my stash. I've shown it in videos before. I have like 2 or 3 large photo boxes full of like every sequin or sparkly thing I have ever seen in the last 15 years. I've got magpie problems and I'm not ashamed to admit it. So I'm bringing in some hearts that are from the same die set as that scallop frame that we used on the first card. And it's just also got a bunch of hearts in it. It's called Heartfelt Thanks and Scallops. And I think this is the middle one. And I've stamped the I Love You that comes from the same Be Mine stamp set from Pixi Dust. I love this. It's so cute, and there's a little heart in the U in place of the O. It's tiny. I'm going to use it in another video later this week. Love, love, love. So I wanted just a little sentiment on the front of my card, and I'm going to stick this heart right in the bottom middle. You certainly could use a sentiment stamp instead. If you have like a strip stamp, you can curve that on your block or on your Misty door to make it match the curve of that snow globe. Here I am taping a piece of cardstock temporarily to another full shape of the snow globe, and I'm just trying to make sure I get it straight in my scoring tool, right? So I lined it up right at the top of the base of the snow globe, and that just helps me line everything up. I scored it about 3/4 of an inch, maybe an inch from the top, and then I'll fold it back and add glue only to that flap, and then I'll line everything up and press it to my snow globe. And now I have a heart, I should call it a heart globe, right? A heart Valentine shaker globe. It's so cute. I think I'm giving this to my youngest son who loves critters and reds and pinks, and I love him for it. Those are our 2 cards for today. I would love to know which one of these is your favorite. Do you make shape cards? What kind have you made lately? I want to know. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.